Kurt, welcome for another episode of PBT Extra. I'm thrilled because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Much to discuss. But first and foremost, how was your weekend?
It's
How are you
good.
doing?
It's good. You know what the buzz is in our house this week? And you're a music guy. You love music. So this is sort of up your alley. Although I'm not sure you're his guy. Harry Styles starts his LA residency of like 15 concerts this week.
Wow.
And if you have 3 teenage daughters in the house, Harry Styles is now everything for the next 2 weeks. Like the girls are going. There's a couple of nights we have tickets for them to go. My daughter is coming back from college for one night to go see Harry Styles and then go back up to Santa Barbara. They are obsessed with this. So it's Harry Styles week in our house, man. What's going on in your house? It's probably not Harry Styles week.
No, it's not. How long is that drive from Santa Barbara to where you are?
She's on the train, so it's not too bad. But the drives, look, it's as with all things in LA, traffic dependent, anywhere from 90 minutes to 3 hours, but usually around 2.
I mean, still for a concert, that's love right there.
Yeah.
No Harry Styles for me. I am. It's been pretty nice here in New York. It's weird. It got a little warmer, so I just been kind of. But the leaves are changing, so I just walk around the parks. I'm just kind of like taking it all in. It's very much like a fall rom-com in New York City right now, and I'm kind of living. I went to there's this really amazing book. Like I live by this park, and they have these little the little libraries, those bookstores. I guess you know what I'm saying, like the ones that are community book things. You can take one, leave one, and you would not believe what I found in this. I mean, I was expecting to see like self-help books, like I don't know, like romance novels. I don't know what you put into a community library in the middle of Queens in a park. I found 3 Theban plays by Sophocles. So there I was, Kurt. I'm sitting here. I was walking. I was like, no way. It's a Penguin classic. Like, this is awesome. So I grab it, and I ended up going. A friend invited me to the Yankees playoff game where they got swept by the Astros. So I go up to the Yankees game, and I get there early. It's rain delay, so I'm reading Antigone in Yankee Stadium, waiting for the Yankee game. So that was my week.
I think you tied the tragedies in nicely, though. So there you go.
No, seriously. I think morning broke out. But let's talk about basketball. Enough of Antigone of Sophocles, and enough of baseball. We're kind of surprised. I'm surprised. I don't know if you're surprised. It's still early. I know we're only a few games in, but the Blazers.
Yeah.
I mean, Portland is 4-0. The Spurs, shout out to San Antonio, 3-1. Utah Jazz, 3-1. So, what are your thoughts on these teams? Is this sustainable?
I think Portland is for sure. Like, I've really been impressed with them. First off, Lillard, right? I mean, Lillard is back. He got that core surgery last year. You watched him play. Doesn't he look like his old self again? The same burst, the same shot. Yeah.
And he's doing this, and it's back to game time, which is great. I mean, because part of it, of course, is like the physical side, but then the other part of it is mentally. Being that guy, being that alpha.
Yeah, and I think he got there. I'm a little more worried about your Spurs. They're 3-1 is a great start. You know, man, they're playing hard. They're playing really hard. But it's interesting. I was talking to a scout friend of mine this week, and I said something like, man, the Spurs and the Jazz, they're starting fast. And he goes, yeah, you never want to play the teams you think are going to tank early in the season because they still care. They haven't been beaten down by losing. Management still wants to win. Like, everything's still in their favor to kind of put their best foot forward. So they're much tougher to play now than in like February. And I'm like, maybe that's the case. The Spurs, though, Greg Popovich works miracles, doesn't he? I mean, he gets guys to play hard, and Devin Vassal's awesome.
Yeah. There's some really good pieces. Just so young, but I think that's one thing that I will say that I love about this part early in the season. When you think about with the different timelines of the NBA season, there are different lives, and that first life. All the great teams, I think, other than the Bucks, who started off really hot, right? But a lot of the great teams, like you're still trying to figure things out, playing around with some things. Potentially, you could argue it's almost like an extension of the preseason. Like, let's throw around some lineup change. Let's play around a little bit. Get our feet underneath us. Especially like the Warriors, you'll see people coming after them, playing their best basketball against Golden State because they're defending champs. And then after you get your little, you get your sea legs. Now let's start playing basketball. And then every single week or month after that, the best teams just continue to get better and better and better and better. I think no one, encapsulates that better than last year's Boston Celtics. right?
Yeah.
Started off terribly and then end up going to the NBA Finals. So I think the flip side of that is that these three teams are probably doing the opposite, right?
Yeah. I think Portland will come back, but I think that they're like, we've talked about this in the preseason. The West is really deep already. And when you get Portland off to a fast start, when you get New Orleans off to a fast start, picking up, I mean, they beat Dallas the other night without Zion, without Brandon Ingram, without Herb Jones, who's their best defender and would have gotten the Luka assignment. Like, that win is huge for them. They're off to this 3-1 start. And suddenly, if you're one of those teams kind of stumbling, and I think I'm not really worried about the Warriors getting it together, but I've been around the Clippers, and there is very much a sense of, and the Warriors have this too, it's a marathon. It is a long season. We're not stressing about wins and losses too much this early in the year. Like, we just want to get better. We want to kind of ramp this thing up and build something. And that sounds great, but it gets crowded if you're trying to get into the playoffs and you get the Trailblazers off to a fast start and the Pelicans are there. And suddenly you got a lot more teams to get by. It just becomes a lot harder. There's not going to be a lot of nights off in the West this year. Yeah,
I think the jockeying for position, that's a very fascinating argument. It's a very fascinating discussion in general. You can argue, okay, well, what do you need to do here? Are we trying to get, obviously you want home court advantage in the playoffs. So you're thinking, okay, well, there's a certain, you really want those positions. But then if you're a great team, you're thinking, okay, I'd much rather develop that chemistry, right? And hit our stride when we need to hit our stride. I always think of it like track and field. I remember when I was covering track and field as a reporter, one of the things that's fascinating is some people, it depends on where they are in the training cycle, they're competing for different outcomes, some people are trying to win that race. Other people are like, okay, I'm just started my season and I just want to make sure I get my wind up, or I want to work on this, or I'm actually working on this time. It doesn't really matter what the outcome of the race is. It's more of a training session for me. Other people are like, okay, I just trained hard. I'm hitting in my peak. Now I'm trying to go for Worlds or for the Olympics. So it depends on where you are in your training cycle. And I think that's just an important kind of metaphor for us to remind ourselves of, like you said, this is a marathon for the best teams. And for the short teams, I think, or for the bad teams, I think they're looking at this like a sprint and then reevaluate and then say, okay, are we going to tank or not?
Yeah. I think I look at 20 games into the season, I think you're going to see teams do exactly that. And hey, where are we on this? What do we really want to do? What's our goals this season? And we've talked about it. I expect some surprise teams to just pull the ripcord and say, because of Wembanyama, because of Scoot Henderson, because the potential prizes are so high this year that I'm sorry, Adam Silver. I know you've spent the week talking about how we shouldn't be taking, but there's going to be more of it. And it's not just, Corey, it's not finishing with the worst record or the second worst record because you get your 14%. When they flattened out the odds, So you used to be when you were 6th or 8th or 9th. Hey, your odds aren't very good. Should you push for the playoffs? Your odds aren't very good. They're not bad now. And suddenly, if you want the first or second pick and you're like, yeah, but if we lose a little and we get a 12% chance of one of the top 2 picks, you might be willing to take that.
Yeah, it's like some advanced calculus, though. I can imagine people abacuses, GMs with abacuses trying to figure out the odds as we go on. I want to get your thoughts on 2 different teams really quick. High expectations for the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 1-3 at their current moment. And the offense seems to be James Harden dribbling. And then the other one, Miami Heat, also 1-3. What concerns do you have for both of those teams?
I'm genuinely more concerned about the Heat. Their offense has been, frankly, pretty bad, just not consistent at all. And Jimmy Butler hasn't played poorly, which is the concern there. It's like Jimmy Butler's playing okay, and your offense is still struggling. Tyler Hero's been mostly pretty good as a starter, but they're not in a groove right now offensively. And the defense that normally saves them when the offense isn't there has been kind of middle of the pack. It's just been okay. And that's not good enough for Miami. And again, that's the situation. The East is like the West. If you stumble out of the gate too deep, it's suddenly hard to catch up because there's so many good teams. I think Philadelphia, don't you feel like they're more likely to turn it around? They're kind of playing the long game. Joel Embiid's not 100%. They do move the ball on the half court sometimes. Sometimes it's a little too much Harden, but sometimes they're doing, you can see, I think, is it just me or do you see flashes of a really good team in there?
For me, Philadelphia is it's just I feel like half the time it's like a mirage. I feel like I'm sojourning in some deep desert, and I'm like, okay, well, where's water? And I see Joel Embiid playing MVP caliber. I'm like, oh, it's water. And I get close. I'm like, oh no, it's actually Jokic. He's MVP again. Like I feel like that's what, like, I always feel like there's a mirage in Philadelphia. So I could see there are these flashes of brilliance, but I just don't know if it's real or not. And that I think is the most heartbreaking. I mean, my heart just broke as I said that, because I know how passionate Philadelphia fans are, and I know how, I mean, their teams are playing so well right now. Like maybe they can grab something from the baseball and football. Maybe that just seeps into basketball. I don't know, because everyone else seems to be playing really well. But
it's maybe good for them that they're all distracted by the Phillies right now, right? So they're not getting the same attention in the media from everybody in Philadelphia right now. I get that. By the way, I will say what worries me about them is when I watch them, if you've got James Harden and Tyrese Maxey plays hard, but he's not a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's an undersized backcourt, and you need Joel Embiid to be at his peak. And like you said, he's not. His conditioning isn't there yet. He's not that guy. Their defense struggles now, but I keep looking at it and thinking, Embiid starts playing like Embiid, and it gets a little better. But you get into a playoff series, and I am more concerned when they go up against a Bucks/Celtics elite team that I'm not sure defensively if they can hang after watching them the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, we have seen teams get better, as the season goes on defensively, that's for sure. But I do think I agree with you. For me, I think you said the magic number 20. That's where I think you're going to get an idea of, okay, well, who are we as a team? What are our chances, going forward? And I think you're going to start seeing the dust settle. So for me, I don't really look at like just how good a team is until about, you have a little bit of time. Just, you have a little bit of a data set. So for me, that's about 20 games. And then we could really start doing the brutal kind of like the naked, like, okay, what do we really think about this team? Until then, I kind of give people benefit of the doubt to come and go. I want to get your thoughts on Jay Crowder, because we know that Crowder is very vocal about not being in Phoenix. What updates do you have? What do you think? What team should be looking for him?
First off, I've got to say, if for people listening, go to NBCSports.com. I posted a story on the Suns today talking about their bounce back season. Well, not really a bounce back season, but how they handled the kind of crushing exit and the lower expectations. And look, they look really good to start the season, and they kind of look like that 64-win team again. So I talked to Monty Williams, and there's some other stuff in there about that. So go to NBC Sports, check that out. Crowder is part of the reason I think we were all done. I'm like, man, Jay Crowder's not there. I don't know what's going to happen with that, because the places that keep coming up as options, Miami is definitely interested. They've got a PJ Tucker sized hole to fill at the 4, but until January 15th, they don't really have a trade that works. The Suns aren't interested in Duncan Robinson, and the salaries don't match up. So the Suns would have to send more out. It's just kind of messy. So it's hard to make a trade before January 15th, and then Dwayne Dedman and some other guys come available, and maybe something can be worked out. But I don't know if he's going to be on the market that long. The Bucks are absolutely interested, but again, it's a little trickier fit. But the Bucks also have a PJ Tucker sized hole at the 4 that they would like. There's a lot of teams that would like to replace PJ Tucker with Jay Crowder, right? Like the other name that comes up, I know the Hawks have come up. I'm not sure about that one. Like, just he doesn't want to come off the bench in Phoenix. John Collins has been fantastic to start the year in Atlanta. You're coming off the bench in Atlanta. And again, since they extended DeAndre Hunter, they don't have a clean trade number. So this is one that could drag out a little while, I'm afraid, Corey, which is kind of weird because he's valuable, right?
He's valuable. And I think, like you said, you already saw what he could do for a really good Miami team. So that fit you already know exists, So I think that's why it's like, oh, just come back home in that sense. And both those teams that you mentioned, other than, not Atlanta, but Miami and Milwaukee, they both kind of have like the same type of personality, which is we do us. We're going to go fly under the radar. We know what we do really well. Your role, you come in, and just help us win. That's all that matters. The thing that concerns me right now about, like you said, about Crowder is that he, like in Phoenix, it seems like that would also, like, you're going to be one of the top teams in the NBA. Like the comeback season is not necessarily, it's like they had 64 wins last year, like so it's like they had a disappointing exit, like you said, but they're still a really good team. And you would think that, okay, you understand the role, you want to be a part of it, you want to be valued here and win a championship. Phoenix would be a pretty good place to be. So that's kind of where I'm confused as far as like, well, what exactly does he want? Is it going to be like a Jeremy Grant thing where, you could have been a great role player for Denver, but you didn't want to, you wanted to be the guy. But then, the cost of being the guy is that, you become expendable, So that's kind of one of the issues that there's more scrutiny, you become expendable if it doesn't work out. So I think that is the biggest question for me. I'm like, well, Crowder would be essentially doing almost the same thing, for another great team. So why move? That's my personal opinion.
No, I'm with you. I think it was not get what the rumor is that he didn't get an extension that he wanted, and they essentially told him, hey, we want more shooting in the starting lineup, so Cameron Johnson's going to start. And Cameron Johnson's played well. He is younger. He is more athletic. He absolutely shoots better than Crowder at this point in their careers. But push comes to shove in the playoffs, man. I trust Crowder. I nothing against Cameron Johnson.
He's young.
I know that I can trust Jay Crowder to hit big shots, defend up, right? Like defend guys bigger than him. Like it's a valuable skill. And it's kind of, when you start looking at matchups way down the line, that's one of those things where you're like, everybody could use a Crowder.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like what Grant Williams was for, the Celtics down the stretch, same kind of concept there. So one thing I think is an interesting note that I would want to get your thoughts on is the Lakers. I know we talked about fits. Russell Westbrook has not been a great fit for LA. And we thought last year, we're like, okay, we'll give it time. He's this guy, former franchise player. I know he's had a rough couple of years recently being bopped around the league, but potentially, it'll be like Space Jam. It'll work out, right? I think. And it didn't work out. And it has continued not to work out, even with the new head coach, Ham, Darvin Ham said, like, early on, he's been very vocal and supportive of Russell Westbrook coming into the season, which a lot of people are like, what are you going to do with Russell Westbrook? Given that backdrop, what is happening with Russ? What do the Lakers need to do?
I'm wondering, Corey, are they getting to a point where addition by subtraction is just the best move? Like you watch him play and you can see it wasn't, everybody's focused on and rightfully, by the way, on the shot with, I think it was 27 seconds or 30 seconds left in the game against Portland when they're up 1 and you want to run out the clock and there's 18 seconds on the clock and he just walks into a mid-range and shoots a hero ball shot. And, there's video of LeBron and Anthony Davis kind of like raising their hands like, what? But there were a lot of other plays at the end of that game where he wasn't eager to go set screens and do the things that he said he would do, that Darvin Ham needs him to do, that the Lakers need him to do. And I'll just say after the game, being around the Lakers, the tension was palpable. Like their frustration level after that loss was pretty intense. So I'm really curious where they go from here because it's ramped up trade talks and all sorts of like, what do you do about Westbrook? Even though, wouldn't you say, Corey, in some way, look, I don't want to say he's not been a problem because he has. He's also a scapegoat right now for a lot of things that are wrong beyond just him, isn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, you saw what happened last year, right? Like Vogel was the one that got, axed. Yeah. But now I think it's going to come down to the fact that, look, something's going to happen with Russell. That's just kind of like there's nothing else you can do. The thing that you're right, though, it is interesting. Right now, no one's going to blame LeBron or Anthony Davis in that, especially if Anthony Davis is healthy. And I think it's unfairly, we've always talked about the secret to this team. And even Darvin Ham said this, right? Like in a press conference, like Anthony Davis, right? Like it's like everyone knows that that's the secret to the team. And yet like we have this red herring. It's almost like I feel like we're watching like a magician, on stage. It's like everyone's like playing with this and then he does the real card trick over there or that's what's happening. It's like Russell Westbrook is like the sleight of hand where everyone gets their attention and all the attention goes there. But the real magic is clearly Anthony Davis. Yeah. Everyone's been very clear about that. But if they were to remove Westbrook, I do think I think the team would be better, right? But I do think you're right. It's going to be more of a just a clear look at, well, who really are the Lakers, and are we getting sold, a false bill of goods?
Yeah, I mean, look, Russell Westbrook has not shot the ball well, but neither has Kendrick Nunn, neither has Patrick Beverly, neither has, like, all these guys, they just don't have shooting right now. LeBron is their best shooter, and Corey, they won a championship since Miami. The book on Bill, and back before that in Cleveland, the book on building a team around LeBron is surround him with shooting, right? Like, let LeBron be LeBron and surround him with shooting. And Anthony Davis is sort of the same way. He can get buckets, but he can also distribute. He's drawing attention. You can move the ball. They just can't shoot. And at the end of the day, like, the name of the game is to put the little leather ball through the metal hoop, man. Like, it's not, they are struggling to do that from the outside. Portland ran zone against them and packed it in. And I think you're going to see more of that, where teams are just going to be like, go under every screen, pack the paint, take it away, because we're going to make them shoot. Westbrook going away. By the way, I think the next step, and I imagine Ham's a little hesitant, next step is to bring him off the bench as a sixth man. But
they played around with that concept too. It's like, remember he said, like, he thought he almost tweaked something muscular because he never, for 14 years, he never had that, in his pregame routine, which I thought was an interesting comment.
There's a real question about, like, if he does that, what's the reaction, right? Like, how does this really go if he brings Westbrook off the bench? Is it more disruptive than what they're dealing with now? So
more disruptive. I mean, and that's a hard concept for more to be more disruptive.
Yeah,
I think the essential thing is, like, when you think about, like, Russell Westbrook, like, for me, it's addition by subtraction, just purely in the decision-making category, And I think that, because like you're saying, the team they're not very good shooting team, period. It's not like Russell. I mean, at the beginning of the season, Kurt, I looked at the first game, right? And you had the Lakers putting up 40 plus 3-pointers, which, by the way, just shows you how the NBA is going. But if that's the way that you need just to be competitive or be a championship contender, you're going to have to shoot a good percentage of 40 plus 3-pointers a game, and you're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. This is just like simple math. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be successful playing that style.
Yeah. Well, you have to take what the defense gives you, right? Like in every sport, as a receiver, you had routes like, all right, they're playing me off. I've got to cut this off and, take the shorter. You throw underneath until you can open up something else, right? Everybody's going to give them jumpers all day long, that entire roster, until they start hitting them. So, again, removing Westbrook or trading him, the trades are still out there. The Lakers wanted to, again, wait till about 20 games and see if the market shifted, if anything shifted. But the losses, the tension piles up on those, right? Like, now you're going, and by the way, they've got Denver, then Minnesota, then Denver again. And like their schedule, New Orleans comes to town. Like, it's good team after good team after good team. That's, again, part of the West. But there's no, like, oh, you know what? The Lakers can just rack up a win here night, hanging out there for them. Like, it's, and as that snowballs, that pressure to do something builds.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's kind of, maybe, you know what? Maybe Russ just needs a music recommendation, Corey. Like, you're a music guy. I think we've got a new segment called Corey's Jukebox. I want to hear some recommendations for you for players and teams, man.
Yeah. I think the way I thought about this is, if I was going to, because I like portraits, like sketches, I like covering an art background. If I was going to paint someone with music or a team with music, how would I,
That's a good way of looking at it.
I think that's kind of the way I was thinking about it. And these are also great songs, so they definitely double as reps. So if anyone wants to add these to your playlist, be my guest. First one, we got to start with some Sam Cooke, because we just got, soul. So in LA, I was thinking, okay, well, if I think about the Lakers, I think about Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Going to Come," right? That song, to me, is emblematic of this team, because you have one of the best players to ever play basketball on that roster, and he's playing exceptional basketball. He's still like playing a very high brand of basketball. Then you have Anthony Davis, who's one of the most, singularly talented players. So you think, okay, well, at a certain point, something has to flip just off of like those two guys by virtue of them being on your team, right? Then you add in, and this is a big thing for you, Kurt, defense. The Lakers are top 3.
Yeah, they're second in the league right now. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So you think, okay, I know they're not shooting well, and back to your earlier point of, okay, well, take what defense gives you. If their shooting does improve, and you get that spacing, and you allow LeBron to do his thing and Anthony Davis to do his thing, this team all of a sudden becomes really good, in that sense. So I think, but if you start with the defense, it's so funny, Kurt. I was looking at this old interview back in the archives on NBA.com, like way in the vault, of Karl Malone talking to Chick Hearn,
Oh
and
wow.
Karl Malone's rookie year, right? And he was, and one of the things that Chick Hearn was saying is like, oh, it's funny because a lot of people, what's the transition been like for you? And Karl Malone said, everyone thinks that no one plays defense in the NBA. They're wrong. Like this is like you got to play good defense. And he was breaking it down for the from the perspective like I have to guard James Worthy tonight, and if I don't play defense on him, he can score 30 easy. And I think that in today's NBA, we focus so much it's an offensive game, and they've like called it to promote the offensive game just because it's a prettier game and it's better product for fans. But you still got to play defense. The best teams in the league who go to the finals are great defensive teams, like the Celtics, for instance, the Warriors. I mean, so if you think about that comment 40 years ago, it's funny how history repeats itself.
Yeah, I think that's good. But I'm glad you made that point. That Darvin Ham, he's gotten them to play defense. He's gotten them to run.
So if you focus on that and then kind of work backwards and trust that the offense will be there, knowing that you have two great offensive weapons in LeBron and Anthony Davis, I think eventually a change is going to come. And also that song is like kind of sad too. And I was thinking like right now for LA to be this bad is just sad for the NBA. It's just sad for basketball. Next up, the Atlanta Hawks. This one I want to take you to the realm of Tony Bennett. I love like Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, that type of music. Taking a chance on love. Go look at the lyrics of that. It's saying, I'm starry-eyed again. I'm gonna, try to fall in love again. That's what I feel about the Atlanta Hawks. Ever since Trae Young became, everyone's favorite supervillain in Madison Square Garden, and that team, we saw something that was so special there for a brief moment, and then we thought they were going to continue to build off of that. They didn't, right? And then this season, they made some big moves. Like their owners were saying, okay, look, we're going to try to make some big moves. We're going to spin. They apparently thought they were able to do that, getting DeJounte Murray. And now it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll fall in love with this team again. Maybe I'll be starry-eyed again. Last year, they let me down in a big way. But, I was like, potentially, with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray and John Collins playing the way they are, maybe I'll do it again. And that's kind of that was my take on that song.
That's a great take because there's a lot to like there. And for all the concerns you can have about fit, that's a fun team. And that's a great song fit because I think we all want to, right?
Yeah, we all want it. Exactly. It's like, I know Trae Young's like a super villain in that sense, but like you do. I mean, we watch superhero movies. Like you do really want to. Like you want to see Lex Luthor versus Superman. Like you want to see those kind of like Joker versus Batman. Like you kind of want to see that in any type of great narrative. So I kind of like I feel like he's just so young, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're all so young. But I think there's something really special happening there. Or, I could be heartbroken again. That's the risk. You take a chance on love. Last but not least, to wrap up the segment, I was thinking Kevin Durant, the singular player. I was thinking, okay, well, how would I describe Kevin Durant? And the correct answer is The Blueprint by Jay-Z. I was just thinking, like, through the whole album, like, just like the whole album. Because I thought he, to me, is like the Oprah of basketball. And what I mean by that is like, the two highest paid basketball players as far as, salary are concerned are LeBron James, who's in his late 30s, and Kevin Durant, who's in his early 30s. And Kevin Durant is someone who is just such a master at manipulating the media. And the thing is, he'll tell you exactly what he's doing and then just do it. The way that he can manipulate media on Twitter, but then disappear. Yeah. He also has this amazing ability to be invisible at the same time as being one of the most vocal people, in sports. And he understands that if he goes to a press conference and says Ja Morant is unlike anything we've ever seen before, that's going to be one of the top stories on every sports news. Everyone's going to write about that. So he can manipulate basically like honors for his fellow peers. And he's always like one of the captains for the All-Star teams too. So he can. So I think he is very aware of that position. In addition to the fact that he's winning Oscars and Emmys and producing content for other people, and he doesn't have to be the star of it. I think he's very much becoming like an Oprah kind of figure, which is like an amazing thing to see a basketball player do that. I think he could be the first basketball player EGOT winner easily.
He is. That'd be an interesting, the EGOT chase. I could see him being in there. He does things thoughtfully, right? Like he genuinely doesn't do things rashly, or very rarely does things rashly. And even the stuff that's kind of comes off as rash and doesn't go his way, like, hey, fire the coach and the GM, or, like, that was just a leverage play. He knew what it was. He knew how it was going to play. He knew exactly how it was going to work out, or likely to work out. But it was the only card he had left to play, so he played it. And it didn't work, and he moved on. And I think it's interesting you brought up his Twitter, because there's a lot of people like, he's so thin-skinned, and he takes all this stuff first. And I'm like, he's playing. He's just playing out there. He's not taking it personally. He's good with himself.
I think he's like I said, the first not the first, but he is kind of like a basketball mogul in that sense. He has boardroom, and I think he understands like how to run a media company. I think he intuitively understands how media works, and I think he sees it beyond of just like, okay, well, most people think I play basketball, then I become an analyst, right? Like, I think he sees it like I play basketball, then I own a media company, and like I then hire analysts, and that's what I mean. Like that's a Jay-Z model, that's an Oprah model. You make billionaires. That's a different mindset, and I think that's how he sees it. So that's Corey's jukebox. What do you think?
I love it, man. We got to do this. Will be back. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not sure when, but we are definitely bringing this back, Corey. You were fantastic, and I love this segment.
Sweet. Now I want to move ahead to this weekend, because there are some. It's not the best slate of games this weekend. We're going to be honest here. We're not going to be deceitful in that sense. Not the best. Any games catch your eye? Are there any matchups you're looking forward to?
A few things. I mean, first off, the NBA does this every year, right? They load up the first week or two with stars on stars and these big games to get everybody's attention. Then you got to start grinding through the season. But the two things I think I'm watching are, again, the Lakers. Like I said, their schedule's brutal. Things are getting tense there. Like, well, do they pile up more losses, or do they find some wins? But I'll tell you the other team, and I mentioned them earlier, Pelicans, man. The Pelicans are getting wins, doing it and having fun, but their schedule gets serious. Suns, both LA teams, then they go home after that and get the Warriors. Like, so I think we're going to find out a little more about Zion and company after this week. So what are you looking forward to?
Well, be really quick on the Pelicans. Even what is the likelihood Zion finishes this season healthy?
I want to believe. Back to Tony Bennett. I still want to believe, man. The injury he had is pretty minor. The posterior contusion bruised his butt, dude. He got fouled. He fell. I mean, it was a pretty nasty fall. If you've seen it, pretty flat fall on his back. It was sore for a day. He's supposed to be back. I'm hoping that his new diet and his new exercise regimen, and he dropped some weight. I'm hoping all this does it, because he's so much fun to watch. So, and even with that optimistic outlook, is it 60%, 65%? I'm not sure what that number is, man.
Yeah. And that's I think you're right. It's encouraging to see them play well without him, but we also saw that last season. And I think that New Orleans fans are probably, there's going to come a time, Kurt, when you think, didn't we just pay you like $200 million, and we're getting into playing games and we're playing well without you. I think this is when you have to control, the sentiment here of like, okay, well, this is one of those scenarios in which you need to, if you're not producing on the field, I mean, on the court, you have to produce. That's like the number one thing. But if you're not, and you're in that scenario where sentiment might turn against you, you got to get involved in the community. You got to be out there. You got to be like all over New Orleans. You got to be one of those fixtures, because right now I think Zion's in a perilous position. If this team plays well and he keeps getting injured after this huge contract, I think people's patience are going to get really, it's going to get real thin.
I agree. Yeah.
Other games, of course, Spurs. Love that. But I do want to draw your attention to Mavs Nets. I think that's interesting on paper.
Yes.
Ben Simmons has had trouble adjusting to, he keeps fouling out. So
he has, as of today, Corey, as of us recording this, he has 3 more points than personal fouls this season.
Wow. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a very crazy stat. That's a crazy stat. What do you think contributes to that? Is that just, it's such a radically different NBA, I guess, because he missed he's been out of the game for a minute.
I think the fouling, he's just adjusting to what he can and can't do physically and finding those lines. And as you know, as anybody who's played a sport knows, those lines kind of move game to game. It's what one ref calls is not what another ref calls, and you have to adjust. But I also think he's just struggling shooting. Like, he's not racking up a lot of points. He's not shooting from the outside at all, and so you've got to get inside to the paint, and it's kind of crowded in there, and he just isn't finishing. He's not finding the space and finishing the way he did before, but that may come with time.
I do think, though, that he's in, as far as like what the Nets are asking him to do, he's in a very good position, because Steve Nash made it very clear. He's like, we're not looking for him to score. Like, we have we have Kevin Durant, like we have Kyrie Irving. Like, they're not necessarily asking him to do that. I think what they're asking him to do is like play a Dennis Rodman role for them, right? Yeah. And I think that if that is the outcome, is like, Dennis Rodman, but like handle the ball. It's like, what I'm saying, like, because he has such a unique skill set, Ben Simmons does. But like, Dennis Rodman made the Hall of Fame doing what he did very well, and won championships. So I think that's kind of like the comp that I would say to a lot of people, is like a freak of nature physically, that is one of one, that plays incredible defenses at high energy and brings that kind of like the edge to every game. That's what the Nets are asking him to do. So it is almost an interesting stat in that light. Perhaps that stat you just said, that his 3 more points and personal fouls, is actually a compliment. I don't know. Who knows?
The problem is, and for them right now, is that their defense isn't good. Their defense is bad. They're scoring plenty, but they score 30 a game with Durant and Irving score 37, and they still lose, right, to the Pelicans. They're not getting stops. They've got to find a way to, and Simmons is at the heart of this, and Nick Claxton too. They've got to do better getting stops if they're gonna right this ship.
And you mentioned it. I mean, you kind of undersold it, actually. The defense, they're 30th. So they're like the bottom of the barrel in defense right now, with the star in Ben Simmons too.
They're the bizarro Lakers, right? Like, offense is fine, defense is terrible.
That's really funny. And then another team that I thought was interesting is the Nuggets. I know they're playing the Lakers. Where are you on the Nuggets right now? Because we have been waiting to see this team really hit.
And it hasn't really clicked to start the season. And this is one of those teams, I think, where the 20-game marker is a better, like, we've got to be patient. Jamal Murray's just back. Michael Porter Jr. is moving well, is shooting well. I'm not really worried about Jokic, but it doesn't, when you watch him, it still feels like a little your turn, my turn. Like, it's just not meshing the way it will. And maybe I'm kind of I'm really in a wait and see mode with them. What about you?
I see a couple different routes here. I'm afraid it might go. I think that game in the bubble, I always go back to that series in the bubble between Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray. Yeah. I thought that was the moment where you said, okay, well, potentially you could have 2 stars being born in the NBA. We saw what happened in Utah, and they ended up being, it was an implosion, right? Yeah. And I think that what you see with Denver, I think it might be a similar route here. It's fascinating. You have such a talented player in Jokic, and you have such a patient organization, and you're in a very unique spot where you don't necessarily have that pressure. And this is crazy to think about. They have a back-to-back MVP, everyone's healthy, and still we're like, Denver, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a pretty crazy place to be in as far as expectations. We'd much rather talk about Portland than Denver, or like the Lakers than Denver, and that's like a really interesting place to be in as far as being in a bubble and ignoring the outside noise. However, I do think this season will be kind of like the turning point for management, and okay, well, look, we were very patient with this. And maybe our investment is not just playing out. It might be time to rebuild, as far as like around a different group. So that's kind of like, I think they might go the Utah route, depending on the success of this. I think this is a critical season for them.
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, both of them, like Utah and Denver, are both kind of like in their own space. That's like a unique part of the country as far as like basketball teams are concerned with NBA. Like they kind of do their own thing, Yeah. So I do think that Denver might go that way if it doesn't work out, which is a fascinating idea. Because if you really think about it, to break up Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and that whole squad, that was a pretty crazy concept. At least for me, I was like, man, and it happened. So who knows?
Yeah, no, it's not a lot of. There were a lot of teams and a lot of owners who would have looked at that and said, wait, we're going to fill the building and win 45 to 50 games a year and be decent. I can live with that. Don't break it up. Let's just be good and make a lot of money for a few years. And to his credit, or if you don't like that idea, chagrin, but like I think to his credit, Ryan Smith and Danny Ainge went a different direction. Said, no, if we're going to win, let's go do something that wins. So.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that. Now it's time for the fun segment. Halloween is right around the corner. Do you have any plans?
It's funny. I'm going to a party this weekend, but it's not a Halloween party. It's a Oktoberfest party. So we're. I am not wearing lederhosen. I'm sorry to disappoint Corey and much to the joy of my wife, who probably didn't want to see me in lederhosen. But I'm going to that. We're going to drink beer, and we're making potato dumplings. And like I would use the German pronunciation, but I couldn't begin to say that word in German. My German is not near good enough for that. So we're doing that, and not much else. We're not our kids are a little old for the trick or treating, so I'm a little disappointed. I don't have to steal some of their candy now. But
it's funny, like the traditions. I never really was a big like Halloween tradition guy. I know it's in New York. It's like one of the biggest holidays. I mean, it's huge here. I mean, it's absolutely massive. But I'm going to like this artist dinner, which would be fun on Halloween. But then for an organization that I support. But this. The concept for me when I was in college, that's when I kind of started taking Halloween a little more seriously. But like I said, I don't like parties. So I did a different thing. And so what I used to do with me and my friends, we'd go to, there were all these pumpkin patches in the Midwest. So we'd go to a pumpkin patch. We'd, dress in fall clothes, go to a pumpkin patch, just hang out all day, do like the corn maze, like do all like the fun, drink apple cider, pick out pumpkins, take them back to campus at Notre Dame, and then carve them, have a pumpkin carving contest, then like roast the seeds, the pumpkin seeds, and then watch like a childhood like Disney Channel original movie that's like a Halloween movie. And we would always watch things like Halloween Town,
Oh wow.
Or like The Nightmare Before Christmas, like like just classic like old movies that we used to watch growing up. And that was kind of like Halloween. So it was more like a very family friendly, I guess, it's just very family friendly, but it's more about a celebration of fall than, like a Halloween party per se. But it was fun.
Yeah.
So now in New York, I do the same. I used to do when I first moved here. I would go up to like, Sleepy Hollow. I would take the train up on the Hudson. You see all the leaves changing. You go walk around Sleepy Hollow, go to Tarrytown, get some ice cream. Cool. And then like after walking through the cemetery all day, then come home and like wear a sweater and then watch like Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire. So
Harry Potter are always good Halloween movies. They've all got that vibe.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is the time. If you're going to watch Harry Potter, go to Peacock and watch Harry Potter and just start like, every week heading into like the holiday season. But for all the latest NBA news, articles, and more, go to NBCSports.com/NBA. We're going to be back next week. Have a happy and safe Halloween, Kurt. Enjoy your Oktoberfest. And I cannot wait to see you then.
I look forward to it.